Hey, no, I'm doing good. No, I appreciate you asking, and I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me today.
My pleasure. Where are you? You're in Nova Scotia?
Actually, I have to update that because I realize my Skype says that. I did live there, but I'm currently in Alberta. I'm actually a prairie child like yourself, so
Oh, cool. Where in Alberta are you?
Edmonton.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah,
Spent a lot of time in Edmonton in my life. I got a lot of family out there.
yeah, definitely. And I mean, they always give you a warm welcome whenever you perform here as well. I've got to see you a couple times out here, and we're gonna
Oh,
get into
cool.
all of that. But real quick, I see you with all the guitars behind you, and I saw you earlier on Instagram Live as well. Is this at your home, and how many guitars do you actually have?
I honestly don't even know, but yeah, this is the house. In the studio area, we have a. My father got creative with the slat wall, and he was just visiting and thought like, let's put a slat wall up and put some guitars up. And I'm like, okay,
That's
that's
awesome.
just some of them. Most of the actual stuff that I use is not here. It's like, or it's in storage or in Los Angeles kind of thing. So this is just what happens to be in the house. Well, and then there's stuff out in all the other rooms. So yeah, it's crazy.
So that's
It's a
just
bit
for
of
personal use.
yeah, pretty much. Yeah,
Nice.
it's kind of a problem actually. It's starting to be either get a bigger house or more storage. Yeah.
Do you get addicted to buying guitars?
I wouldn't say addicted, but I definitely love guitars. So I definitely have had trouble saying no every time I come across a guitar I like. That's for sure.
That certainly makes sense. Do you have any rare prized possessions there at all?
Um, there's a few. Yeah, I mean, most. I don't really have a massive collection of super valuable guitars, but a few here and there. That there's a 1957 acoustic right there, a Gibson.
Wow.
So that's old as all get out, and a few of these are pretty cool. But I mean, most of the really good stuff's locked away.
No, that makes sense. You got to keep it sort of, I guess, in pristine condition for when you do want to break it out and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, kind of. I'm not really. I don't really baby the guitars. I'm kind of they're meant to be played. You know what I mean? So I sometimes the odd dent and ding and scratch is kind of like just an unfortunate part of how it goes.
It's par for the course. That's true.
Exactly.
Real quick, Todd, off the top, I wanted to talk about something that sort of rocked or sort of, I guess, shocked the rock and roll community, and that's, of course, the passing of Jimmy Webb. Real quick, I was just wondering if there's any words you can share about him, or the impact he's had on the rock community.
Well, it's weird, because Jimmy was a really good friend, and it was such a wonderful eye opener to see how many lives he'd touched. You know what I mean? It was such a, I mean, as long as I've been going to New York since 1991 or 90 or something like that, and Jimmy was always a fixture in St. Mark's Place at Trash and Vaudeville, and I never really knew him back then. I didn't really get to know him until the last 10 years with Slash, and just ended up being a really, really great friend. And yeah, I mean, nobody liked rock and roll or lived rock and roll or was more rock and roll than Jimmy Webb. So as you see with the photos, it's like Debbie Harry from Blondie and Iggy Pop and the Guns N' Roses guys and so many people, like anybody you can imagine has passed through New York City has a friendship with Jimmy Webb. So yeah, he was an amazing, amazing guy. I'm actually having one of my guitars shipped to me right away. We had it painted what we call Jimmy Pink because Jimmy used to wear, punk rock clothes, but he always had like a hot pink kind of logo for his store, and this sort of hot pink kind of was his color. So I had one of my basses that I play with Slash done up in this hot pink crazy color. So it looks crazy 80s, but it's super. It's for Jimmy. It's for Jimmy Webb. Yeah.
I love that. No, that's a great memorial for sure, and rest in
Yeah.
peace to him as well. I want to go back a little bit for you. As I mentioned, we're both sort of from the same region of Canada. It's the prairies. Where
Yeah.
did this all really start for you? Because I know you have music in the family. I know it's not just you.
Yeah, my parents were both musical. Like my mother played a bit of piano. Um, we had an organ in the house, when pianos became kind of, harder to move around. So, and my dad always played guitar. He was sort of like a three chord campfire cowboy song kind of singing guy. And that's sort of where it would have started. I mean, mostly just from that. And I was born in Estevan, Saskatchewan. We moved up to northern Manitoba, a town called Lynn Lake, where Tom Cochrane was born, oddly enough.
Hmm.
And yeah, I know it's a funny little. I didn't even know that back then, frankly.
Oh yeah.
I didn't know it until after I was gone.
Right.
So I started playing guitar around 11, and most of that was just kind of mucking around, and you find friends, and we all make a bunch of racket together, horrible noisy racket, and then yeah, and then I started bands with friends up there, and then we moved back to Saskatchewan. I was about 13, 14, and then it really kind of happened. I had a bass. My father, in his wisdom, thought we should get a bass, so that kind of landed everything for me, because nobody seemed to want to play bass back then. Nobody wanted to be a bass player. Drummers, everybody wants to be a drummer or a guitar player. And then yeah, I just kind of slid in with guys way older than me, and their ability level was so much higher than mine that it was just kind of like this catch-up game of me having to get as good as possible, as quick as possible.
Right.
And then with that became then they had me singing this and singing that, and the next thing you know, I was singing a lot more, and I became a singer in those days as well. So yeah, so I mean, and then honestly, touring across the prairies, Saskatchewan, Alberta a lot, every corner of Alberta, a lot of places in Alberta I played, Winnipeg and Manitoba a bit, and then slowly just eventually migrated all the way across the country in one shape or another.
And just kept going from there. No, that's wild. So,
Yeah.
what sorts of opportunities are there in Saskatchewan, Manitoba for a 14-year-old Todd Kerns? And how hard was it for you to be with those older guys? Like, how much older are we talking about here?
Well, I was still in junior high, and these guys were out of high school.
Okay.
So it was, probably a 5 to 6 year difference, which actually in reality doesn't seem that weird.
Hmm.
But at the time, they were grown-ups, and they had jobs and whatnot, and I was still a kid in school. But we we started playing. I mean, we lived in a small town, 1,500 people. It wasn't like we were outside of Saskatoon, so Saskatoon was essentially the big city.
Yeah.
Regina was south, and that was a little further away. But those were definitely the cosmopolitan type places. As small as those places are to us, they were the big city.
Yeah.
So it's but there was, oddly enough, a lot of musicians in that whole scene in Saskatchewan, Alberta. Everybody that I knew was a musician, and we used to play high school dances, and we'd play local parties and whatnot, and just kept going. I mean, like I loved it so much. While other guys were getting jobs and getting married and having families, I was still like deeply in love with the idea of playing music. So as the other guys were kind of fading away into grown-uphood and being adults and into reality, I was still kind of like, I'm good to go. I got a guitar. Let's go, do whatever. And you find the right bunch of knuckleheads to keep doing that with, and they drop off, and then you find some new guys to go off and do it with,
You find the guys that are going to stay in it for the long run.
Yeah, or longer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
longer
forever.
Run,
yeah,
yeah,
no.
yeah.
Yeah, either or, I guess. Either the longer run or actually stay in it. So then 1991, approximately, you moved to Vancouver. Is that right?
That sounds about right. It was either 91 or 92. I'm always trying to like do the math on that, but somewhere around there, yeah.
Okay, so you're coming from a town with 1,500 people to Vancouver, one of the biggest cities in Canada. What's that transition like?
Well, there was a quick transition through Calgary as well. So I spent some time in Calgary. I lived in Regina. Like after high school, I moved to Regina, Saskatchewan,
Mm-hmm.
then to Calgary, which made sense at the time because we were playing so much in Alberta, because there was a massive touring market in Alberta. But even then, when I say I moved to Calgary, it was kind of like I didn't really live anywhere. We kind of lived on the road.
Right.
We kind of lived in hotel rooms and in vans and just traveling around. And then but we did make a conscious decision. Bob Rock, the producer, he produced Metallica, Motley Crue, and bands like that. He eventually came across us when we were playing, and we traveled up to Vancouver to play. And he wanted to do something with us. He wanted to record us. He took a shining to us, So we So we thought, the hell, let's go to Vancouver and make a real go of it.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of smart timing on our part, even though I don't think we really thought it through. But the scene in the prairies and all that started to dry up. Like it started to kind of go away, and a lot of the older crowd will tell you that there was a lot of work back in those days. You could tour across Canada and play cover songs and just play bars for 6 days a week.
Wow.
But that started to dry up just when we decided to move to Vancouver, and we moved to Vancouver and just became, for all intents and purposes, made it like we're going to be a real band and get signed and put out records and all that kind of stuff. So that slowly became a reality. You know,
Yeah.
it was kind of different because we'd spent all this time on the road, and then moving to Vancouver and having to kind of make a name for yourself in a town that you know, there's a lot going on. There's a lot of big fish in a town like that. So, but we recorded, and that eventually led to Age of Electric having the recordings that we eventually ended up doing, and were quite successful for us, you know.
Yeah, you guys had some really huge records, and I mean, a lot of tremendous records that I mean we could go through. And it's crazy that you work with Bob Rock. Would you ever expect to have Bob Rock at a show, just sort of scoping out new bands?
You know, it's funny because he'd come a couple times, and I suppose it became, you know, we were also sort of being courted by some record companies, and by that point, you know, and you know, mostly Canadian labels and stuff like that. And I think we'd become kind of accustomed to, you know, name people being in the audience, even if they were, you know, whoever, you know.
You were on the radar.
Yeah, somewhat. Like we were definitely. I always sort of liken it to the idea of, it's like showing up to a club, and they have a velvet rope, and there's a guy standing there with a clipboard, and he goes, "Your name's not on the list," and you go, "Oh, okay," and you just keep coming back night after night after night, and eventually they just go, "Fine, just go in." That's what it was like, just having the tenacity to just keep going and going and going until finally everybody will see you. It's just a matter of, like, because you're just around so much, and if you're playing that much and working that much, you just get better. You know, the band gets stronger, and you're writing more, and you're writing more and more songs, and I don't think anybody really expected Bob to be like, you know, to slam dunk love us, but we knew we were, you know, we had something going on, and he was kind of like these guys, let's try and do something with them. And ultimately, and not much really came of the initial work we did with Bob, because we tried to get a record deal. Well, we were offered a lot of record deals, but we were really kind of had our eye on the bigger prizes of Europe and America and that kind of stuff. So we really sort of tried to you know, keep ourselves open to that. And we had a pretty good independent career in Canada, so we didn't really see a whole lot of benefit to signing a Canadian deal. Obviously, that's how you know, we were very bold-minded guys, considering we thought we had it all figured out, which you never do. But we thought, well, you know, we got it all wrapped up here in Canada. When we eventually did sign a U.S. deal, we kept Canada independent, because we thought, well, you know, we've got our own indie label in Canada, and we thought, look, we'll give you the world, but we want to keep Canada for ourselves. And I remember the American label was kind of like, knock yourself out, because you know, what is the Canadian population is the population of, I don't know, New York City, maybe, or New York
like that, yeah.
yeah, or something, yeah, exactly. So they were kind of like, whatever. And it actually really worked out well for us, because eventually when the label kind of fell through, we still had rights to our own material for Canada. So we just kind of moved forward from there.
That's awesome. And you guys, again, had a tremendous amount of success. You kept it going for a number of years. So at a certain point, you went solo, and you obviously had a lot of success with that. So at what point do you meet Slash, and at what point do you become involved with Myles Kennedy and the Conspirators?
Well, from Age of Electric would have split up around 98, and then I did, my brother and I from Age of Electric put together a new band called Static and Stereo. We did a record. I did a solo album around 2004. And then in 2006 was I made a few trips to Las Vegas. I made tons of trips to Los Angeles, but oddly enough, Las Vegas was the place that I had friends down here, and it just became kind of like the hub of where to be. And there was a bunch of things going on, and a bunch of gigs, and a bunch of work, and a bunch of recording, and it was really cool. And I decided in 2007 to try and take a longer trip. I didn't really intend to. I wasn't moving. I was just kind of like, I'm going to come down and figure some stuff out. And I figured it was close enough to Los Angeles, which it still is obviously close enough to Los Angeles, that it makes sense to be in the desert like this, but you can be in LA pretty quickly. And and I basically came down, got sort of reset up in Las Vegas, and then the Slash thing came up around 2010. So our drummer Brent Fitz is Canadian as well, and we've been old friends since back in the day. And when he got the gig with Slash, he called me and said, "Do you want to come down?" And I always tell the story. He never made it like an audition. He said, "Do you want to come down and just jam and check it out?" You know what I mean? I was kind of like, "Yeah, sure. It sounds like fun." And when I went down there, I just never left. Like, I went down to jam, and they never let me leave.
They're like, "Okay, let's write the album now."
Yeah, exactly. It was boom, off we went. Yeah.
Well, that's a compliment.
I guess, I mean, they were kind of in a position because I think I was in the band a week, and we were already on The Tonight Show with Jay Leno.
Wow.
And a bunch of other stuff. Yeah. So the record we were supporting at that time was Slash's first solo album in 2010. He had a record made with Myles Kennedy, was the singer on a couple songs. Lemmy, Iggy Pop, Fergie, a bunch of people sang, Chris Cornell.
Huge record.
A bunch of people were on the record. So we supported that record basically till 2011. We did a year and a half tour of that album, and then spun into making a record in 2012, making a record in 2014, and then making a record in 2018. Yeah, so we've been doing this. I've been doing this 10 years with him as of this month, April.
Wow.
So April was 10 years ago. Yeah, weird.
That's insane. So with all of your experience, was it easy for you to just jump in and be like, okay, new band, TV appearances, tour? Was that easy?
Yeah, I mean, I think I got it to a point, by that point in my life, playing music was just obviously natural to me. And my confidence level as far as being, you just know what you're good at. You know what you do. You're kind of like, I would imagine, I don't know, because I'm not a 6-degree black belt of anything, but I would imagine having these skills to be able to be, to have trained and be prepared and know that if someone comes at you, I know how to deflect that blow and blah, 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 blah. And that's kind of how I feel with music, is eventually you get to a point where, I can hang with this. I don't think that there are certain things that, there are certain sort of more muso type bands I don't know that I would probably be the best suited for. But with Slash's band, I was like, yeah, I'm 100% the guy. And the fact that Myles and I sing so well together, that became a different facet and a completely, other part of the equation that really kind of found itself.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the power of everybody in the band is one of the things that makes it so important. And it makes me wonder, like, almost everybody in the group is used to sort of being the front man of their own thing to a degree.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah, like, I'm curious, is there any feeling of that, or was there any discussion of that at first, or was it just like, we're all just going to come in and put our best foot forward and we're just the group?
Well, I think like anything, like I am pretty good at knowing, this is my job in this gig. This is what I do in this gig. This is what I do in this gig. So right. As a singer, as a guitar player, as a bass player, as a, whatever, magician, which I'm not, but you go into each job sort of going like, okay, well, I am a lead vocalist and a front man, and I can talk to an audience and I can do that job. But in the Slash camp, Myles is the lead singer. He's handles all that. My job is to support that and play bass. So it really kind of it's really I never really feel like out of place in any of those situations. It's just kind of like, okay, this is what I do here. This is what I do there. This is what I do in this particular gig. So it keeps it kind of like, it also keeps your brain fresh. As you go into a new situation, you have to use this part of your brain that you've never used or don't use very often, and then all the way down the line. So
yeah, That completely makes sense. And again, that's what I love about this group is that everybody in the group is insanely talented. And it's sort of different because, there's a lot of groups where the front man is somebody from another group that was well known and people only know them. They don't know the members. But this group, people know the members. People relate to you guys and people want to.
Yeah, I think it took a minute actually, because I think a lot of like around the world, Slash is obviously, known all across the universe.
Yeah.
And Myles, same thing. Myles was, very well known and has become even more well known as time goes by. And the rest of us had to kind of like, a lot of people found us through Slash, so it was like stuff like within the first year of being with Slash's band, it had changed my profile completely. It just sort of had a whole different effect on things, and continues to this day, that way.
Yeah, definitely. Was there anything that sort of changed when you were on stage with him versus being on stage regularly in terms of being better suited?
Well, the one thing I will say for Slash that I thought was really cool is he never once said to us, you have to wear this kind of shirt or play this kind of guitar. He really just kind of like, the coolest thing about Slash is that he just kind of like, he's hired you to do a gig and he trusts that you're going to bring your A game and do your best. And I think that we just sort of like, you roll up, you do your best, you try to bring, there's no I in team, so there's no I in Slash.
Yeah.
So, Slash really likes being on a team. He likes being in a band, and he likes, to be able to rely on each guy. And that goes all the way around. A band has to be, you have to rely on each other in these live situations that they're all going to bring their A game. Everybody's going to do their best,
Yeah.
So we, I just, my thing was just to kind of be the best you can be, period, and that doesn't mean that you're, the best guy in the entire world or the best musician in the entire world. You're just being the best that you can be in that given situation and on that given night and at that given gig. So it's really all you can do. And that's what I choose to do.
Right. Absolutely. In terms of the Slash set, in years past, it was a healthy mix sort of you guys' songs and then some gun songs. In the past couple of years, or at least the last time I saw you guys, I don't think there were any gun songs included. I'm just curious, is there any conversation about that backstage when making the set list, or is that just the way it ended up happening? You guys picked those songs?
Yeah, because in the beginning when we started playing with him, it was like Slash's Snake Pit, Velvet Revolver, Guns N' Roses. So we actually did an Alter Bridge song in the beginning as well. But on the last time around, it was definitely discussed. Slash said, I just want to do Conspirator songs now. And I remember being kind of like, are you sure? Like, it's not a lack of confidence. It's just kind of like, oh, okay, if you feel like that's what you want to do. And we did Night Train almost, I think every night we did Night Train from Appetite for Destruction. And the rest of it was all in the solo album, Apocalyptic Love, World on Fire, Living the Dream. I think we might have done Fall to Pieces by Velvet Revolver here and there at some juncture, but largely it was just sort of like, we built 3 albums plus the solo albums worth of a catalog. And we always say our last tour was our best received in a way, because it's kind of like no matter who you are, you're starting a new band, you're really kind of building an audience, you're trying to get people to dig your thing, and we in the beginning we had basically had the first solo album and all Guns N' Roses and Velvet Revolver and Snake Pit stuff, so it was kind of a slam dunk. That set was so, it's a hungry audience coming to see Slash do all that stuff, so it's kind of like a baited audience of just kind of like getting to hear all that stuff was awesome. But we definitely learned that over the years we built an audience. By the time we got to the Living the Dream tour, it definitely was a well received. Our audience was definitely likes to hear that stuff. So to hear our stuff, that is, so that was very, very, very rewarding.
I can only imagine. It sounds like it. In our last couple of minutes here, I just wanted to look at a couple Facebook questions that were sent in from all across the world. There's this one question here from William He says, "Hello, I'm Brazilian. I love your work, and I would like to know if it was always your desire to live on creating music from the start."
Yeah, actually,
It was.
I don't even think it's a choice, and I say this all the time. It's kind of like, I was listening to some actors on a podcast talk about like, if somebody ever brings up the idea of like, should I do this for a living? Should I, it's kind of like, these are the kind of questions that if you're asking those kind of questions, you may not be qualified to be, to be doing it, because people like me, we never really ask. We just keep doing and going, and sure, there's going to be times in life where you might feel like maybe I should be doing something else, or
Hmm.
because the music business is not. No one just gives you a career. You got to work your butt off at it. So,
For sure.
but yeah, no, it's. I feel very fortunate every day to wake up and realize that my job and my gig in my life is making music and playing music and being around music.
Yeah.
That's, if you would have told me that when I was 15 years old, that that's what it was going to be, I'd have been like, that's awesome.
Yeah, seriously, that's a blessing. We have a number of people, I can't even name the name, asking if there's any signs of an Age of Electric reunion.
Well, Age did a reunion in 2017. We
Hmm.
haven't played together in many years, so it's always on the table. To be honest, we talk daily. It's the funniest thing that, like, we've always sort of been friends since we were kids, and then you don't play together, but you still kind of are constantly in contact. And I think geography really kind of makes a big difference. My brother John is in Toronto. The Dahl brothers are in Vancouver, and I'm here in the States. So
Yeah.
that does serve a little bit of a problem, but I certainly think that it could happen. It's not off the table for sure.
Okay, not off the table. That's encouraging. The final thing, there was a ton of people that were asking about your experiences working on the Kiss cruise with the Bruce Kulick band, and I heard you mentioning that you're working on music with Bruce Kulick. If there's anything you can mention about that.
Yeah, I've known Bruce for a long, long time, and he was the first time I ever saw Kiss. He was the guitar player in Kiss, so it's really, really a thrill for me to be able to play with the guy. And Brent Fitz played in a band with him, and so when all this stuff came up, doing solo stuff, doing appearances with on the Kiss cruise and stuff like that,
Yeah.
we assembled a lineup: myself, Brent Fitz, Zach Throne, Bruce, and we've done it. I think this year will be our third or fourth time. If all goes well, considering what we're dealing with.
This
But
is true. This is true.
we that's the plan, is to be to be doing it again. So yeah, and there's new material that we're trying to. Again, a lot of that's been kind of hit the pause button because of the virus, but that's sort of that's happening as well. We're definitely going to
Okay.
go forward with that too.
Well, this is very good to know, and I can't wait to hear it. I'm always a fan of Bruce Kulick stuff, and definitely always a fan of your stuff. So that's two worlds that I definitely would love to see collide. Todd Kerns, thank you so much. And if there's anything that you want to shout out, let people know about, please feel free.
No, I just hope everybody's taking care out there, being safe. It's such a crazy time. I can't imagine from one person to the next. Every time you kind of almost forget once in a while, like, oh right, we can't go do anything because of the thing.
Yeah.
Took's got a bunch of dates. Our Canadian band is, we're watching our dates kind of vanish because of the way things are going. But we also have new material coming as well. So Took's coming down the pipeline as well.
Awesome. Mr. Kerns, thank you so much for your time and stay safe.
Thank you, brother.
All right.
Take care.
Bye bye.